This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Hello and welcome to episode 39 of Cooking with Grief. I'm Chris, the human gammon joint, and I'm joined as ever on this investigation of the interesting, this odyssey of the obscure, this analysis of the amusing, is a man who seasons with science, hula hoops with history, scuba dives with shame, but luckily for us, he cooks with grief. It's Chris.
Hello. Wow, you actually managed to segue the title into the into a sentence. Probably the first time in this entire thing.
Well, after nearly 40 episodes, I thought we should really address the name, shouldn't we? It makes zero sense, but at least if I can crowbar in a context, then
yeah,
it
worked. And as we discussed earlier, I have been cooking with grief as my main ingredient for the last year. So,
well, as a man who used to exclusively live off baked goods, then I think I was doing that for years. I've only recently introduced the vegetable. Wow. Turns out when you don't just boil them in an English way and sort of season them or roast vegetables, they're actually quite nice.
Yeah, surprising, isn't it?
This isn't a cooking show, but occasionally it is. Here's how the podcast works. Each of us two Chris's bring two topics to share with each other for the first time, and by process, you, the patient listener. It can be anything from history to art to science, and everything in between. And hopefully you'll enjoy what we've discovered in the week. So Chris, why don't you start us off with your first topic?
So for my first topic, we've spoken a lot about various ancient cultures, haven't we, on this podcast? You've always had an interest in ancient history and ancient languages and languages around the world. Mm-hmm. Have you ever wondered what... Because obviously we deal with things written down, we read what ancient Greek looked like and what Latin looked like and, the Rosetta Stone. Have you ever wondered what it sounded like for these people who lived way back when?
Well, the interesting part of studying classics is that because it's all written, you never learn to speak it. Also, we've got a rough pronunciation, but we could be way off. I mean, even the fact all my life I've been pronouncing it Herodotus, but apparently it should be Herodotus. So even
the emphasis.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we've not been able to,
without a time machine.
Roman? Yeah, but scientists have been able to recreate the last sounds of a Egyptian mummy.
Oh,
so
was it?
Well, it's funny you should say that because.
Sorry, this is the most unscientific thing. That's the fucking last sound was fucking mummy letting one rip.
Oh, so what they did was this is the so we're talking about a bloke called Nesyamun. Again, no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. Who lived in the time of Ramesses XI.
Right, I see.
3,000 years ago. He's been mummified for 3,000 years, and scientists, they used MRI scanners and X-rays and things of that nature to recreate in 3D, like a 3D modeling software, his voice box and tongue as they are, and then put that into a simulation, simulated air going through it, and that's it's the noise that you get.
I mean, that is a lot of... I'm sure the scientists sound, but that's a lot of work to... What I would assume, if someone has been... Well, the last thing you said before you're mummified is probably... like a sad duck 3,000 years ago.
It just reminds me of Monty Python, where it's like, Castle, It's like, maybe he got killed when he was still writing it. Yeah. Apparently, one of the reasons they chose him was, he had quite an intact, as far as a mummy goes, he's quite good nick. Well, I mean, they're all in quite good nick compared to 3,000-year-old bodies.
That's the benefit of the embalming process.
Exactly. Yeah, and also, apparently, in his, they put all the hieroglyphs and stuff around and saying what they want, and one of the things he put was that he wanted his voice to speak again in the afterlife. So they're like, well, don't know if it actually happened in your mythology, but science has got you back.
And what they came out was
yeah, so it was it's pretty crazy though. I mean, obviously.
I mean, the science is incredible. The result is somewhat lackluster.
Yeah, well, because the problem is they can only recreate it as it currently stands. So, so as his voice box is in its present state, his tongue may have moved around during, whilst they turned him over or whatnot. So it may not be his actual last words, but I like to think they were. Like, any last words? Especially because people always get when famous last words, people always get, not always, but lots of them get something pithy and
it's always
witty.
more eloquent than the actual truth.
And I feel like the actual last words of anybody were probably
nurse.
Yeah. It's like there's that Roman
please, not yet.
Was it I think it was Flavian, somebody like that. He his last words were like, "Oh, I think I must be becoming a god," because they got made gods after they died, didn't they?
Yeah, and that's infinitely more sort of prosaic than. So, who from history would you like to hear their voice of?
Or hear what they sounded like. We're actually speaking, or just hear their versions?
I think is pretty universal. Okay, let's take that as read. Maybe slightly higher, slightly lower.
Okay.
But their actual voice speaking. Because this guy that was mummified, maybe he...
Talk about a deep, sultry voice.
Or maybe he talked like this, but his last words was...
See, the thing is, obviously, with modern recording is we know what, most famous singers we know of, and we know what they sounded like because they recorded stuff in their, lifetimes, whereas I'm not aware of... I mean, there must have been some ancient or medieval singers that everyone was like, oh, you have to hear them, and lost to time. But I can't think of any off the top of my head. So I think it'd have to be somebody who's really good at speeches. Like Julius Caesar or somebody.
Or Cicero, maybe.
Somebody who, must, for people to think it was worth writing down, must have been really able to, whip up a crowd or something.
Yeah, because it's disappointing. You read these amazing speeches, the sort of power of their oratory, and well, thank you for coming to the Agora today.
Exactly. So, yeah, ridiculous.
Can I go back as far as the dinosaurs? And find, we assume we know what they sound like, but it'd be great if we found out that...
They probably did sound like... I don't think they'd say much more eloquent than that.
No, I'm not expecting words, but maybe, just if we find out that the Stegosaurus makes it sound like a tuba.
Oh, yeah.
Just
like a sad trombone.
Yeah, or like a pterodactyl sounds like a tin whistle.
Exactly. Yeah,
just to round out the natural world.
Yeah, I can get behind that. So yeah, thank you to science researchers. We've now taken your work and decided we want to know if dinosaurs sounded like tubas.
Yeah, we complain about them spending money on what we probably already knew.
Okay, so with my first topic out of the way, Chris, what's your first topic?
Okay, well, I'll start with a question. Chris, do you like public pranks? Not the sort of YouTube pranks we get these days, but more just putting washing up liquid in foam.
Yeah.
In the fountains.
In a fountain and stuff.
Like sort of public display pranks.
Yeah. No, I think find some idea of pranks. They're not pranks, they're just people being dickheads.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, if it's genuinely funny and, everyone could have a laugh and,
if no one gets hurt, but it's just a sort of spectacle prank.
Yeah.
I think
exactly.
that's more fun.
You're not trying to just get a reaction out of somebody.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I'd like to tell you about the Gavelboken, which is a giant Christmas display of a straw goat.
Right.
That is erected every year in the castle square of the Swedish city of Galva. And it was first put up in 1966, and each year they make it at the start of Advent. And ever since, there's been a sort of counter-tradition of burning it down.
Nice.
Now, the vast majority of people do not want it burnt down, are incredibly annoyed that people keep burning it down. It is still illegal to do it, so it's not like a ha-ha, like playing along. They're like, stop fucking burning our giant goat made out of straw.
Yes.
So there's this sort of cat and mouse game between the Swedish police and people who think it's funnier to burn down this thing that everyone likes.
I'd say that go. Yeah, I think if you're burning something down that everyone likes, I think we're crossing the boundary into just being a dickhead now.
Okay, well, let's hopefully skirt on the border away from dicks.
Okay, alright.
I think what's funnier is the sort of how the story's escalated since it happened, rather than people being genuinely upset. So the first year, the town came together, built this thing, and this guy decided to burn it down.
He just hated goats?
I guess so. He just...
Or happiness?
Yeah, I don't know. My research has not found why it happened in the first place, but it's happened every year since, or at least they've tried to do it every year since. Since then, 37 years, they managed to burn it down. 16 years have not.
Oh, okay.
So the
The burners are winning.
Yeah, if it's literally, on the scoreboard, because, they've only got it's quite easily to burn, So some of the memorable years, in 2001, a 51-year-old tourist from Cleveland, Ohio, came to visit and thought that he was taking part in the tradition.
Yeah.
So he just walked up to it and lit it on fire.
He flew all the way across from Cleveland to settle.
Well, no, so I think he was in Sweden, and then he heard about this tradition where they burn it down, and he didn't know that, that's sort of not the tradition part of it.
He's not really doing wonders for the stereotype of American tourists abroad, is he?
I know. He was arrested and spent 18 years in jail.
18 years?
18 days, sorry.
Yeah,
I fucking love this goat. Sorry.
They're not messing about, are they, the Swedish police?
You will rot in jail. Oh, sorry, 18 days, sorry. That's, later in court, he said he was no goat burner, but believed he was taking part in a legal goat burning tradition, which sound like contradictory stories. I'm not the goat burner, but I did think I was just innocently burning a goat. Over the years, they've stepped up security. In 1996, they installed CCTV cameras around the goats, but they managed to get their own back in 2004 when they hacked the cameras. And while the cameras went down, they snuck in and burnt the goat. In 2005, they stationed guards on the goats, but the arsonists waited until the guards went on a break, and then burned it by shooting a flaming arrow. And for no particular extra reason, they were dressed as gingerbread men.
I feel that adds something to the mischievous tale.
Exactly. In 2006, which was the 40th anniversary of the first goat, and also the first goat burning, they took special measures to fireproof the goat, sort of spraying it with sort of fireproof lacquer, just because they were like, guys, can you just 1 year of all years, can we not have the anniversary year goat burnt down? In 2010, there was a sort of heist plan to pay off the guards and steal the goat in a helicopter.
It's getting a bit over the top now, like...
Yeah.
Did it go ahead, or was it...
No, because the guards weren't successfully paid off, and he alerted the authorities. But apparently they had a helicopter. And 2016 was the most recent successful burning, in which they flew petrol over with drones.
Again, we're going a bit over the top here.
That's when you're like, okay, if you're sort of endangering the public, that's when you think. But yeah, most of the times they managed to do it.
Yeah, it's mad that, I guess like in the early days, nobody was really trying to stop them. You just walk up and set on fire. Going back to the American tourists who just like...
You've got the wrong end of the stick.
Yeah, again, that like stereotype of American tourists walking in, not really understand what's going on, but insisting on being the centre of it anyway, and just being like, I really understand this tradition, but I want to be the one who sets it on fire.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like the idea of placing yourself at the centre of the...
Yeah.
Because imagine if it was like a holy ritual of the burning of the goat, and he just walked up and like, I'm from Cleveland.
Yeah.
I don't know, what's the stereotype about Cleveland, do you know?
I think just that it's really shitty. Like, no offence to it.
At least they're not Detroit, sort of.
Yeah. If we have any Cleveland listeners, I apologise, but I only really know them of the Cleveland Browns, who are perennially shite American football team. And
the lake caught on fire because it was so polluted that...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Lake Erie, didn't it? And again, just going back to the high-tech drones and stuff, it's just like... Just imagine the type of stuff you could do with your life if you weren't dedicated to... This is like,
the guys that were planning to steal it away in a helicopter, it's like, you've clearly got time, resources. Imagine the good you could do in the world, but instead...
Yeah, it's like,
they might say that it's a worthwhile mission, burning the goat.
It's like in films, and like sometimes, like Dick Dastardly and stuff, like in back in
I thought it was very Roadrunner and the Coyote.
And it's always like, if Dick Dastardly just stopped trying to cheat, he'd probably win more than if he spent all his effort on like these, like, because most of his plans involve being way ahead of the competition,
setting up
the trap.
Yeah,
it's like if you just kept going, you'd probably win. It's just like that. It's like imagine the resources you could get. Like,
what a boring episode every week, though. Like he just gets straight in the lead and then coasts.
It's just like Formula One.
And the winner again wins again.
That's an episode of the Wacky Races where Dick Dastardly manages his tyre temperatures. Whole race.
Pulls into the pit stop and Motley just, is that the dog's name?
Yeah.
And just, in 6 seconds just
Off again.
So what have we learned? It's better to...
Not burn a goat if you have no concept of why it's being burnt.
And don't go to Cleveland, apparently.
And if you do have a helicopter, I'm sure there are better things you can do than burn a goat.
Oh, yeah.
If you have any Swedish listeners, though, what is the town called?
Galve. I probably butchered that pronunciation.
Yeah.
G-A-acute, E, the dot's over at V-L-E.
Okay. Yeah, well, if there are any listeners from there, we'd like to know your opinion on goats. Are you pro-burning or anti-burning? Asking the hard-hitting questions on cooking with food.
Answer us! Okay, so that's the end of my first topic. Chris, what have you got for your second one?
Have you ever had to give a presentation for work or university, or something like that? Stand up in front and present something, like maybe about your work or something you've done, and it's gone horrifically wrong.
Last year at uni, we had to do this presentation, I guess, just sort of... it was meant to be just a comedy bit, and it was to open an Olympic sports centre that the Chinese national team was going to use.
Okay.
And the mayor of Leeds was there, and a fair few athletes, and we just did the most we did a lot of fish puns in English, and I told a joke in Chinese, and it didn't really go down well.
Okay.
And it's the sort of thing where it's like, I'm sure it wasn't as bad as it was, but it just felt very childish, and it's the sort of thing that keeps you up at night.
Just pops into your head.
It's just like distilled anxiety.
Nice. Well, as bad as that may have felt, it's not as bad as the time Ford, as in Ford Motor Company, demonstrated the M247 Sergeant York self-propelled anti-aircraft gun.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. They were contracted to build it's basically a tank with machine guns on the roof, but it was designed to be semi-automated. It had driven by people. It wasn't like a drone. Cause this was,
what year was this?
I think it's the 80s.
Right, okay. So long before self-driving technology.
Yeah, so contract was put out in 1977, so...
Right, okay.
Don't have the exact date, but yeah, late 70s, early 80s. Yeah, I say, not a drone, but it did have radars that was designed to automatically track targets and rank them in terms of danger. And, which one, because it was...
You're pretty sophisticated for its time.
Well, unfortunately, when they rolled it out to do the live demonstration, it immediately pointed its guns at the crowd. It's something apparently straight out of Robocop. Designated the crowd.
Exterminate.
Incredibly terrible. In every single way. It was...
It didn't fire on the crowd,
No, it didn't fire.
But it thought about it.
It thought about it. It still needed... Because apparently a demonstration when it was supposed to have... there were some early drones being flown as targets. And
I take it was meant to lock onto them.
And like I say, it took a human to press the fire button, but it was supposed to scan for targets, rank them in terms of which ones seemed more dangerous, which ones were coming towards you, which ones weren't, and which, based on size. And then it would automatically track them because obviously drones move, fighter jets and stuff move faster than humans can sort of react. So it's supposed to take that out. And when a crowd of VIPs and top-level generals and stuff who would be signing off on this program, it just immediately swung round and designated them as the biggest threat. It's making a stand against the military-industrial complex. Apparently, everyone trampled each other trying to escape.
Yeah, I bet. Because this fucking tank's just lined up inside. So do they know what went wrong?
Oh, it was just terrible from the start to finish.
Oh, it wasn't instructed by a shiny medal or something?
No, it was...
It had the soul of a magpie in it.
It was almost certainly must have been some corruption going on because apparently they put out, the US Army says to a bunch of companies like General Motors and Ford and BAE and whatnot, Lockheed, we want something... Basically, we want a tank that can keep up with our other tanks and provide... automated
cover.
Air cover for them. And one of the competitors, when they did their version, shot down, I think, twice to times as many drones as the Ford, and yet somehow Ford got the contract.
Yeah.
And it's so here we go. General Dynamics shot down 19 drones, and Ford were only able to shoot down 9, yet Ford was awarded the contract.
Yeah, some lobbyist,
Yeah, it was also more expensive anyway. It wasn't even like, oh, it's worse, but it's cheaper. It was just worse.
It's worse, but it is twice as much. Ooh.
And they were also, it was supposed to keep up with the new M1 and M2 tanks that the US was developing. And unfortunately, the M247 originally was able to, like the chassis it was based on, I think it was based on an older tank, I think it was the M60 tank, could keep up with them. But then when they weighed it down with radars and computers and everything it needed, it just made it so slow that it couldn't even keep up with the things it was supposed to be. Apparently one soldier once said the only way the M427 could take out an enemy would be to drive over the top of it because its targeting systems were so bad.
I mean, he's not wrong. That would be effective.
It didn't get any better.
Oh.
So they fixed the issue with the aiming at the crowd, only for it to start shooting into the ground instead. With live ammo, this was a live ammo demonstration.
But you said the human had to press fire.
Human had to press it, but yeah, it would aim. I think it was aiming horizontally the right way. It was tracking it, but the guns just weren't pointing up enough. And in the aftermath, they claimed the glitch had been caused by the M427 being washed before the demonstration, damaging the targeting system, which basically meant they'd made a tank that couldn't be used in the rain.
Look, we'll just have all conflicts in, Nevada.
Yeah, and then you're sorted.
It'll be fine.
And it didn't get much better from then. Bear in mind, again, this is all after it had nearly shot like top-level generals and high-level
grass,
and businessmen and the floor and all this. Take 2 or 3.
It's getting another chance.
It's getting another chance. It's getting another demonstration, and it immediately locked onto the the exhaust, heat exhaust things from the toilets nearby. It ignored the. And there was a drone literally like right next to it that was supposed to be aiming at, and instead it just swung round and decided the toilets were the main threat.
See, I definitely want a sort of Disney, like a Cars-style Disney animated film. The plucky, inventor, sort of trying to coach the sort of anthropomorphic tank. Please, this is the last chance. Oh, I'm going to destroy that toilet.
Yeah, fuck the toilet.
Come on, it's a PG film, don't swear. Fuck you.
This cost $54 million. By 1984, it would cost $54 million. Oh, no, sorry, just the tests signed off on to see what was going wrong cost $54 million, which is the equivalent of $144 million. And this was just to find out what's going wrong.
Yeah.
This doesn't even include the money they wasted on getting it wrong in the first place.
So everyone mocked, the big Tesla reveal and showing the unbreakable windows, and they immediately just put a brick through it.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, comparatively, if you smash the window and it immediately drives into the audience, killing dozens, then...
Yeah, exactly. It's
all relative.
So the total costs thought to be about $4.8 billion of today's money on a tank that didn't work and never saw service.
Good. I'd like to say
that's the Cold War for you.
Yeah, that's... Yeah, as we keep coming back to on this podcast, that, political paranoia and almost unlimited money will result in some...
hijinks.
Yeah. Shenanigans. Yeah, some tank shooting into crowd shenanigans.
Just imagine that, though. If you just sat there. I mean, I don't know what you do. You eat popcorn at one of these events? I don't know. But
I think it's more of a canapé crowd.
Yeah, that's true.
So you have a little crouton salmon thing.
Yeah, and then immediately just loads of anti-aircraft guns swing around it.
And you shit yourself, rush the toilet,
and then that gets
and then that targets you as well.
Just can't escape. The only way to escape would be to fly a fighter jet.
With
one thing that's trying to hit.
You climb on one of the drones and just hide in plain sight.
And with that disaster out of the way, over to you for your final topic.
Okay, so for my second and final topic of the episode, I'll ask you, how are you for unnecessary purchases? Buying shit you don't need as a temporary cheer you up thing.
I don't know. I do occasionally, but I really hate having clutter in my house. So sometimes I'll see something like, oh, I really want to buy that, and I'm like, where would I put it? And then I know that if I had it just out and about in my flat, it would really annoy me. So that usually stops me. It's usually stuff like PlayStation games and stuff where it's just like, ooh, well, something that's.
Why are you so camp when you're shopping? Ooh, dare I treat myself?
Don't judge.
No, I'm not judging, just an observation.
Yeah, no. Wow, are you?
Most of my shopping is like, if I've got to go to a physical shop, I have a list I know what I'm getting from what shop. I go in and get it as quickly as possible because I don't like crowds and stuff like that. But does online make it easier?
That's
when
true.
you just like...
I used to, she'd always be annoyed with me because I'd go to the shop for food shop or whatever, and I'd come back, she'd be like, "You got anything interesting in the bag?" I'd be like, "I only got what was on the list." She'd be like, "Why didn't you get stuff?" It's like, "Because it was on the list." She's like, "You're so boring. Why do you never buy anything interesting?" It's like, if you want something interesting, put on the list.
Something interesting.
Yeah. If it's not on the list, I'm not going to get it. I'm in and I'm out. I'm very efficient.
And then she has to go to your cart and she finds, a raft of smuggled custard creams and donuts. I know, particularly with like the rise of Amazon and stuff like that, where everything's just 2 clicks away, and and the money doesn't feel real when you're spending online. I think we think of it as a modern phenomenon, and particularly like with the cult of celebrity, that we sort of were so numb to when celebrities spend ludicrous amounts of money on clearly obscene things. So like, I always find it weird when celebrities declare themselves bankrupt, but still have multiple pools or multiple houses, stuff like that. Like Mike Tyson was declared himself bankrupt while he had a swimming pool in the shape of a boxing glove. It's like, you can't do that. Just sell all that shit. Get a regular rectangle pool and you'll be fine. But so I think we tend to think of this sort of churning capitalism as a modern phenomenon. But I wanted to introduce a story that maybe challenges that. In 1851, on the 25th of January, Leo Tolstoy, who was famous for his achingly longer epic novels, got bored and bought a horse.
Fair enough.
The only diary entry for that day reads, "I've fallen in love, or imagine that I have. Went to a party and lost my head. Bought a horse which I don't need at all." So, like, back in the day, that was the bored, extravagant purchase. Like,
that's like buying a car, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That's
like that's midlife crisis is buying a sports car that you don't need.
Yeah. Well, he bought himself a sports horse.
Exactly. But the idea, if I finish work really late and I'm walking home and like I'm trying to think of like what is there to tempt me between on the walk home.
Mm-hmm.
A kebab,
you work in
fish and chips.
Yeah, but you live in the middle of pissing nowhere, so like there is a limited scope.
I'm probably more likely to be trying to sold a horse. Yeah. Okay, let's say I'm in some major urban conurbation. Yeah. The temptations are still quite small, so it's like pop in for like one last round before the pub shut. Maybe there's like a all-night supermarket and you buy something interesting for once without a list. But just the idea of, on an impulse, buying another, like, a living animal. And what interesting is I failed to find anything more, like whether he kept or even named the horse.
Or did he just regret the horse?
Just let it go. Yeah. Like, he probably wandered back to the stable. He's like, "He didn't want me, it's fine." And it's like, how does he not want a talking horse?
It's not a drunk purchase, but do you see the thing in the news recently about a woman who spent £16 million in Harrods?
Yeah.
I don't even know what can you spend that much on?
I think, from what I remember the story, it was mostly jewellery. Like,
it's still a lot of jewellery.
It is, but she'd spend like 160 grand.
On one thing.
Like, at a time. Or she'd go like multiple times in the day. So it was like perfume and, obviously clothes and, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I've never had that need. I think, hopefully, who knows?
Not time for your midlife crisis yet.
But like, even if I won the lottery tomorrow, I don't think I'd suddenly start impulse shopping at Harrods.
No.
That's not me at all. I'd fucking buy out Greggs. Walk in, 10 a.m. Sausage rolls are fresh. Even the vegan ones.
Oh,
buying a lot. Yeah.
You might get a horse. Why not?
What, in the plastic?
Yeah, it's mad, but like, silly things you'll buy.
And it's just boredom. It's just boredom or a sort of,
ooh. So they get camp.
Ooh, I'm going to buy a horse. Tolstoy is so camp and Russian. If money is no object, there's stories about like sort of sultans in the Middle East who will buy a fleet of jet skis in every colour. Mm-hmm. It's the same boredom as me popping in to buy records. Like I go in and buy the one I actually came in for, but then browsing and it's like, oh, well, I've not listened to that. And it's like, at least with that stuff, it's like physical stuff that I can use again and again. Not that it's one-use jet ski.
Could be.
Well, I suppose for him it could be. Just his daily jet ski.
Yeah.
I'm trying to not have multiples of anything I don't need multiples of in my life.
Yeah.
And the idea of buying a horse out of boredom really tickled me.
Tickles you.
Yeah.
I just like the fact that he wrote it in his diary the next day, like tinged with regret. Like, I didn't need this horse.
It's the phrase which I don't need at all. That at all is so interesting to me. Like, he was considering, maybe I could find a use for a horse.
No.
But at all, I have zero interest in this horse. It's fucking looking at me through the window and going, come on, I'm a beast of burden. You know, you've got the land.
This horse is talking a lot. It's his second conversation.
He did say he'd lost his head, so maybe
That's true.
he's just having imaginary conversations with the horse.
So that means it was a late night horse vendor.
Yeah, sort of 24 hours stable.
The equivalent of 24/7 like petrol station.
Yeah, you sort of stumble in and lock the main door, so you've got to go to the little... Have you got anything in a Shetland? Not at this time, mate. All right, I'll take it. Anything you've got. Unleaded? Yeah. Unhooved? Not unhooved. What do you call it? Like what's the...
Unshoed.
Unshoed, yeah.
No, ungelded.
Ungelded. I know it's 4 a.m, but do you want me to cut this horse's cock off?
Oh, gross.
I think we've all learned a valuable lesson about capitalism.
Don't do it, kids. But also give us money.
Well, the outro's coming up, in which we will ask you to engage in our brand. Yay, capitalism. So that brings us to the end of episode 39 of Cooking with Grief. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll join us next time for episode 40. Getting up there towards the big 5-0. I've been Chris.
I've been a different Chris.
Have you had a nice time?
I have had a nice time. It's been enjoyable as ever.
Good.
Have you?
Yes, it's been pretty damn special.
Oh, God.
If you'd like to help the show out, follow us on Twitter. That's at Cooking with Grief with no G on cooking because we're cool. We're up to 2,000 followers on Twitter, thanks to the social media side of the team's valiant efforts against racism and indifference. If you'd like to get in touch in a more long-form way, you can email. That's cookingwithgrief@gmail.com with the G returned to the cooking.
Because it's formal.
Yeah, because it's an email. You've got to get the license and everything. And what would really help us out most is telling your friends who you think might enjoy them, or family members, or whoever you think might enjoy our careful blend of bullshit and... No, it's not a blend, it's just one thing. And leave a review on iTunes. That helps other people find our podcast. It helps us elevate amongst the dross. Sorry, fellow dross. And, helps the podcast grow. Thank you to Big Heads Media for hosting us and sending us our packed lunches. The Dunkables were particularly nice today. And now you'll hear a promo from one of our fellow podcasters on the Big Heads Media network. So have a listen and check them out. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And we'll see you again next time for episode 40. And as ever, the last word has to be... Bye.
I'm Kyle.
This is Steven.
Together we host a show called
Boar Meets World.
Tell them what we cover on Boy Meets World.
Boy Meets World.
But that's not all, is it?
No.
No, we cover life experiences. Ours. Oh, son of a... Alright, just check out the show, please. We really need it. Okay? We need a win. Just check us out. We talk about the show Boy Meets World. Each episode of our show, we run parallel with an episode of Boy Meets World where we will examine the show.
That's way too much.
What happens, our life, how it relates to it, experiences.
I can't believe you're still recording.
I am recording this. Check it out, guys. You'll get some hilarious stories from me and Steven from our childhood. You'll get a great... I lost it.